Imagine growing up in the 60s, living in a nice community where people embraced each other, until one day, the government decided to enforce the Group Areas Act that created forced removals of colored people from the so-called white areas to a less desirable part of town. Now the Cape Flats became a place where more than 1 million displaced colored and black families were relocated to. Now Rashid and Rashad were born in Deep River in 1961, and their family was moved to a low-income housing area called Menenberg, a poverty-stricken area without access to proper infrastructure and services. Crime and lawlessness was the order of the day. The government was oppressing the people and poverty was all over. The gangs were the lawmakers of the streets. Now how do you survive as a teenager in an environment like that? That's how Rashid and his brother Rashad resorted to a life of crime for survival. It's alleged that the twins only went to school for 2 years due to difficult circumstances. They had to go out and hustle. Growing up, Rashad was the naughty one and Rashid was the quiet one. You see, Rashad started early being an outlaw, from stealing, doing petty crimes, just being a mischievous kid in the area. Now later on, Rashid grew up to be the dangerous one and one of the most feared gangsters in the Cape Flats. You see, some say Rashid was a psychopath that was preoccupied with violence and murder, and Rashad was more the brains and the money man of the operation, something like a chief financial officer. The twins made a name for themselves when they formed one of the most notorious gangs in the country, the Hard Livings. They were ghetto heroes in their hometown of Menenberg, where they were seen as modern-day Robin Hoods. But to the rest of the world, they were just gangsters. Now their headquarters was known as the Walk, deep in the middle of Menenberg. Now that's where they used to operate from. They were known as the Untouchables at some point, and one of the things that they were known for was tossing 10 rand notes from the windows of their cars as they drove by. You see, the two started dealing in drugs in the early 70s as teenagers. Now, according to Rashad, they used to do odd jobs as kids, including delivering papers just to survive. Now, through hustling as youngsters, Rashad knew a Menrex plug. He saved up his petty cash up to 90 rands, which was a lot at the time, and went on to buy his first batch of pills. Now, the money that he made from that, he knew they had a gold mine on their hands. Now, around that time, that's when they formed the Hard Livings gang. Rashid was the muscle and Rashad was the money man.
I never worked. I'm still be out of school. I'm selling papers. When I was small, 9 years old, 10 years old, selling papers, collecting bottles, bones, to sell it for food. So when we grow bigger, we come to steal. Go to jail. What, you know how many times I went in jail? Twice and twice and twice. Come out of jail and I think about myself, hey, who's going to give me a work? No one is going to give me, who's going to give me money? No one's going to give me money. So I collect myself a few couple of bucks and I buy me some Menrex. And so I started with a 90 rand. And from that 90 rand I make big money. Big money. A few years back, every Sunday I come here and give the people money. The people is standing in Sundays. If I drive up here, everybody's come and stand here because they know I'm going to give them some money.
Over time, one of the gang's hustle was selling guns. But they had a strategy and a way of using their access to guns as leverage so they can have some level of control over their associates. One of their biggest suppliers of guns was the police. You see, cops would steal weapons in the armory or report their firearms stolen just so they could sell to the gang. Now later on, Rashid was convicted to 13 years for breaking into a police armory and stealing high caliber weapons.
Do you know what, in the gang fights, you know how many police that we have that shoot guns for us? Do you know how many police that we have? Do you know how many police that we have that bring us bullets, everything?
The police brings you weapons.
The police!
They have nothing to give us. They steal it by the police station. They take his own and they give it for us for money, and they told the by the police station they were robbed with it, but we got it. You see what? I am the supplier right around the peninsula where you see hard livings. They come here for gas. They come here and I give all over the peninsula. You see? Even the mongrels, the big gang, I give them. So we make many business with. Yes. Our rules here, never to sell a. You can never come here and come buy it. We don't do such a thing. We give you a. But when we give you, you must listen what I say, and we can rule you. Because if you not have, you're going to run like fucking chickens in the road when the people chase you.
Although the hard livings are a smaller gang compared to their counterparts like the Americans, they are far more centralized and have a strong hierarchy. Now, other than dealing in drugs and firearms, the hard livings operations also include protection rackets, extortion, prostitution, and the taxi business. But the drug business is their most important hustle. The gang started in the 70s, but in the 90s and early 2000s, that's when the name The Hard Livings was ringing bells all over the country, whether media, news, or on the streets. BBC even did a documentary about the twins.
What's in the
Feared but also revered.
What's in the What's in the
The Staggie twins formed one of Cape Town's most notorious gangs in Manenberg more than 40 years ago. As the leaders of the hard livings, they plied their trade of running drugs, guns and illicit goods, luring young, hopeless youths into the fold.
The very name suggests the genesis of a gang like the Hard Living. So if we are struggling together, we find strength, we find resolve, we find organization, and we find profit in joining up our efforts.
Now, if you look at the name, it has a different meaning compared to other gangs. These guys were conditioned and hardened by their life circumstances, hence the name The Hard Livings. Just before the dawn of freedom in 1994, some ANC members tried to get Rashid to join the movement in trying to bring peace in the community and stopping gang activity. This is because they knew the power Rashid had in the area, and without him on board, they could never achieve that. Now Rashid was reluctant because the peace deal didn't come with any economic emancipation.
Can have a much softer approach, and I grab the opportunity. I think you can do a lot for us. I mean, I'll be open if we can use Rashid to secure peace. We will use him. I think he's got a big role to play, and I've told him that in the meeting. And he doesn't want to do that on his own because he doesn't want to be seen as a sissy, that he is fighting for peace now, you know. I think deep in his heart he really wants peace. That we have. I think the other reason why he's probably prepared to talk to me because I'm with the African National Congress. I'm linked, I'm plugged in somewhere. And whether he likes it or not, the ANC is powerful.
Would you use force if you had to?
If the situation is out of control, and put it this way, if the ANC were in government, yes. There will come a time where the day of reckoning, I'd say, will have to play itself out.
Their reign of terror was disrupted in August 1996 when Rashad was taken out in a vigilante attack by members of PAGAT, People Against Gangsterism and Drugs. Now these were community members who took it upon themselves to clean up the Cape Flats by getting rid of gangsterism and all its elements. Now these mob justice movements were popular in the late 80s and early 90s in the townships. You see, the police at the time were focused on freedom fighters who were classified as communist or terrorists, not gangsters. So the communities took it upon themselves at the time to solve the gangsterism problems in their communities. On the day, a group of PAGAT supporters gathered in the Gatesville Mosque in Athlone on the evening of August 4th, 1996. They went on to march to Salt River. There were around 2,000 people at the time, and many of them were armed with firearms. Now the group carried out military-style maneuvers and shouted slogans as they were marching towards Number London Road. Now when they got to Salt River, where the Staggies lived, the group verbally requested the Staggie brothers, Rashid and Rashad, to come out the house to face the group and receive a message. Now the brothers were not at home at the time, and occupants of the house were not prepared to come out. They did speak to the crowd through a security door, but Phagat supporters opened fire on the house. Many windows were broken and the house was damaged. Rashad returned home to find an angry mob firing at his house. Now bullets were fired through Staggie's bakkies window and one entered Staggie's head. Now Staggie staggered out of the bakkie and a petrol was thrown at him. Now while one guy came over and pumped about 7 into him. Now a few years later, Rashid would order a gang rape of a 17-year-old who had betrayed his trust. He did not do it himself though. The court later heard that the 17-year-old originally was involved with the hard livings. She became a police informant and Staggie had her gang at gunpoint allegedly. Now the girl turned state witness and her 2003 testimony sent Staggie to jail for 15 years for kidnapping and rape. And on top of that, in 2004, Staggie was found guilty of robbing a police weapon storage facility, but the two sentences were served concurrently. Now Staggie would be released on parole for good behavior in late September 2013. Now according to records, Staggie was a well-behaved inmate, never got into any trouble and had completed a number of required programs, and he had served more than 2/3 of his sentence. Now it also came out that he had turned from Muslim to Christianity and was no longer a gang boss. All of this happened not so long before he was released. Now Rashid was known as one of the last Cape Flats OGs. After Rashid came out of prison in 2013, he was 52 years old. He told the media he is a changed man. He was out of the street life and had turned Christian now. His focus will be on his family, serving the community which he wronged in the past. But some people say he was still the leader of the gang and still making moves on the low. He lived a quiet life, not much was heard about him except the time where he joined Kenny Kunene and Gayton McKenzie's Patriotic Alliance political party. And the law forced him to leave the party because according to his parole conditions, he was not supposed to associate with known convicts. According to some reports, Staggie's double life dates back to his conviction for the gang rape of a 17-year-old girl in 2003. The girl was attacked. Now her attack was reportedly in revenge for her informing on the gang and revealing where the firearms were stashed.
Manenberg, an area of intense gang violence in recent months. Residents say they are bracing themselves for the release of notorious gang leader Rashid Staggie at the end of the month. This, as the life of the young woman who put him behind bars for rape has tragically ended. In 2003, Staggie was convicted of organizing Chantal Knight's gang rape. She was 17. He was sentenced to 15 years. He has served little more than 10 years. Chantal Knight was put on life support after being shot in July.
Very few people believed that his conversion was genuine, and his new image upset many in the underworld. Most of all, it was problematic for rival gangs. Now Staggie's business was growing while he profited from his new low profile. Now Global Initiative research also suggested that Staggie was profiting from stirring up gang rivalry in the western areas of Johannesburg and supplying drugs to the two main opposing gangs in the area. Now competition between the two groups is said to have benefited Staggie, who allegedly also supplied Cape Town hitmen to both factions, apparently to ensure that no individual achieved complete dominance in the area. As one of Cape Town's religious leaders put it, the gangs allowed Staggie to live as a civilian. They gave him leeway to a certain extent, but when he tried to operate in both domains, his death was inevitable. Now on the morning of Friday the 13th in December 2019, Rashid Staggie was sitting in a French Toyota Corolla sedan outside his home in Salt River when the two gunmen approached the vehicle and shot at him numerous times. He was confirmed dead on arrival at the nearby Grooteskier hospital. Now Staggie was 58 years old at the time. The car was riddled with bullets, but the driver of the car escaped unharmed after fleeing for safety. Now Staggie was taken out in the same street, London Road, where his twin brother and fellow gangster, Rashad Staggie, was also taken out.
One could be forgiven for thinking this was a state funeral. It was lavish, though. The proceedings started in the early hours of the morning with a private viewing for family and close friends. Later, the procession moved to the Jubilee Community Church close by. Friends, family and clergy paid tribute to Staggie. And despite his checkered past, he was hailed as a man of peace. Staggie's body was also taken to Manenberg, his stronghold. Here he got a hero's welcome from hundreds of locals who came to pay their last respects.
Some years ago, Rashid and his brother were driving through the roads, throwing money for the children and the people, and what I know of is some Christmas times and that they always have to issue chicken and fish oil and stuff to people.
Every Sunday I come here and give the people money. The people is standing in Sundays. If I drive up here, everybody's come and stand here because they know I'm give them some money. That's why if I go away, I'm sure the people are going to miss me.